What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing a spoiler-free review of a movie called Offseason that's scheduled to be in Shudder, but is out on VOD and in select theaters right now. Let's check it out. So first up, I just want to say, when I first saw this trailer, I saw Lovecraft stuff in here, Island Town, stuff happening in the middle of the woods, things like that coming out of the sea. I was on board, let's just say. Knowing that, I went into this movie pretty damn excited, because this has Lovecraft vibes all over it. So what is Offseason? Well, Offseason is a movie that came out in 2021. It premiered at the South by Southwest Festival and aired there for a lot of people to see. In fact, there are people that have already seen this movie about 11 months ago. This is a movie that is directed by Mickey Keating, who also wrote this film. He's done movies like Pod, Psychopaths, and even Carnage Park. So the movie is about a woman who is going to a small island town that has told her to come out for an emergency because someone has desecrated her mother's gravestone. She travels there with her significant other, and things start to kind of unwind. When she gets there, there is a bridge man who tells her that they can't come in because the bridge is up and they won't be open until spring. But she does get her way in anyway because she shows him that she just received a letter yesterday from people in the town who said that they needed her to come out as an emergency. And when she gets in, she soon realizes that the entire town is changing around her and becoming a nightmare. Some of the cast in this movie is Jocelyn Donahue, Joe Swanberg, Richard Brake, Jeremy Gardner, and Melora Walters, with some pretty fantastic performances in this movie. This movie is an hour and 23 minutes long. So what did I think of this movie? I was waiting and waiting and waiting for this amazing thing to happen on the screen. The first act is an amazing setup for this entire situation to occur. Things start to unravel very quickly in the very opening of the movie, and you would think that this would progressively get worse and worse, and it does, but the snack treats that I always talk about along the way are very few and far between. Now, this is going to be a very hard movie for me to actually review because there are some really amazing things that happen in this movie as far as camera work, cinematography, pacing, atmosphere, the look of the whole thing. It is packed to the gills full of everything you would need to make one of the best movies I've ever seen. But it falls short quite a bit because there's not a lot that happens. Unfortunately, I would have to say you need to lower your expectations. Honestly, the way that this looked, they put a lot of fog. There's, the backdrop of this island town called One Palm, which has, tropical fucking trees and bushes and things, which are usually brightly lit in a sunny place to exist, but somehow they transform this entire tropical area into a nightmarish, Lovecraftian, fog-infested nightmare. And there's something to be said about that. The camera shots alone in this are just so fantastic that I was getting reminiscence of some of my favorite movies. One in particular is The Beyond from Lucio Fulci. This almost feels like the closest thing I've seen to a Fulci film in forever, but it doesn't deliver the goods and the snack treats that I always talk about in this film to really kind of push it through the atmosphere. It even reminded me of Silent Hill in a lot of situations. I think a lot of people are going to be making that comparison rather than The Beyond, but to have either of these is an atmospheric fucking dream, or in this case, nightmare. The atmosphere is so thick that it's actually pretty well done, but you kind of get atmospheric fatigue from it, if that makes sense. Now, I'm going to say something that doesn't always make a lot of people happy, but I'm just going to be honest because I just have to explain this to you so that you can make a choice whether or not you want to watch this movie and what to maybe expect without spoiling it, of course. If you've ever seen the movie The Witch, regarded as one of the greatest movies ever made in cinema by a lot of people. I personally thought that everything is well acted for the most part. The camera work and the atmosphere is just so thick and there's just a lot of promise going on. There's not a lot that really happens in the movie, and finally at the very end, you're kind of presented with some interesting stuff in The Witch, I'm talking. And this movie does similar things. Now, if I were to grade this movie based on just the atmosphere, the fog, and turning a tropical island into a fucking nightmare that is reminiscent of something from The Beyond, which is one of my favorite movies, yeah, I mean, I would have to say nothing but good things about it. But the problem with Offseason is that it doesn't really provide any kind of extra treats along the way. Sure, there's some moments that are weird that this main character, Jocelyn Donahue, who plays the character of a daughter of this famous actress, she does a fantastic job of running around from situation to situation, from nightmare to nightmare, but you never really see the nightmares on the screen. There is one or two moments in this film that are kind of sort of this nightmarish weird thing, but they're not exactly like really hammering it home with some extra stuff. There is a lot of people who love Lovecraft, and you know, you'll often hear people say, well, it's just not easy to translate. And that's true, but I think the problem with Lovecraft is that there's parts of Lovecraft that people like individually, and never is there a movie that ever really combines all those elements together. For me, I like a very physical but also atmospheric kind of Lovecraft, and this movie does the atmosphere properly, but kind of fails on the sort of physical or practical that I want to see that's lurking around and chasing this woman in these nightmares. So on one hand, it's really strong and sets the scene perfectly. And I think Michael Keating obviously has some fondness of some of the same movies that I mentioned. There's real talent here, but it just fails at showing some of the good. It's going to disappoint, I think, a lot of people in particular, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be The Witch for you, and you'll just love it based on the atmosphere and everything that you get from the movie, all the way to the end. There is a lot of that, but I would say that the first act is stellar. They do a fantastic job. And then the second act, it starts to slow down and kind of meander into different areas where there's just people standing, which is pretty creepy, but not exactly where I would want it to go, or where I think some people expect it to go. I mean, when most people think of Lovecraft, they think of tentacles and like crazy creatures lurking in the woods like I have, and we don't really get to see a lot of that. So that's the disappointing part of this movie, but I'm kind of stuck in the middle here because there is some things in this movie that I've never seen another movie do since some of the originals. And it is kind of borrowing in that regard, but you know, this is an island town. This is a Lovecraft story. So a lot of it's going to feel familiar anyway, because most people borrow from Lovecraft anyway. But I just don't think that this is going to be the Lovecraft movie that everybody is kind of hoping. For me personally, I want more physicality, more things that are lurking in the darkness, in the fog, in this wonderful atmosphere that Mickey Keating has created and shot and acted and directed. It's just a little bit of a disappointment for me. But, you know, I did enjoy my ride somewhat there. It is definitely above average just in the atmosphere, and the shots are so great. And the performances are in here that are really good too. Like, this whole movie starts off with Melora Walters, who's talking about life and death, and it really kind of sets up the whole movie for sort of what to expect about life and death and what's in between. And then it continues on doing act sheets. Act one, and they, you know, move on to the next act. And then they do this in sort of a stylistic kind of choice. But again, it's like nothing really reaches that amazingness. Now, there is some pretty revealing stuff in the trailer, and if you watch the trailer like I did, I think all of the best parts are pretty much in there, and it's unfortunate because I was hoping to see so much more. It's almost kind of deceiving to me in some regards, and spoilery. So if you haven't seen the trailer, maybe don't watch it and just kind of go in for this movie thinking like, hey, The Witch. Now, it may not be as strong of acting as The Witch is, and it may not have as thick of atmosphere as The Witch too, but I think maybe those who can kind of separate seeing all the wonderful goods on the screen, gory creature feature sort of delights that can kind of starve themselves of that and just get wrapped up into the atmosphere, maybe you'll love this movie. I don't know. But for me, I fell flat, and it sucks because I was really, really anticipating this one to be a good one. So it's, again, I don't know what to score it. I don't know. Is it a 6? Is it a 7? Somewhere in between? I don't know, because this movie delivers on something that I rarely see in films while not delivering the rest of it. I have to give it at least a 6. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to see it again. I'm sorry I can't give you a definitive answer on there, but I'm just kind of miff. And I guess that's the disappointing thing about it. Giving it a 6 feels like it should have been an 8 or a 9. While there is amazing things in it, it just didn't push it into greatness. I hope this helps you to kind of get an idea of what this movie is like. Do not expect it to be overtly crazy and in your face. This is a setting that is going to creep into you, and you may expect more than it delivers. So you may have to taper your expectations, but if you're all about the atmosphere and that's all you want, this may be the perfect movie for you. Otherwise, like me, just a little disappointed. What did you think? I would love to see Mickey Keating do another attempt like this. I just feel like we should have seen some creatures and some otherworldly stuff. Yeah, there's a couple of cool scenes in the movie that are okay, but honestly, like, I really wanted to see just the whole world unfold. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have you seen this movie? Are you looking forward to seeing it? It's eventually coming to Shudder, so if you want to see it, you can. But right now, it's out on VOD and in select theaters. So I think I paid $5.99 for it to rent it. But yeah, if you're anxious to see it, you can rent it or go to the theater. If not, maybe you'll just wait till it hits Shudder and watch it on streaming in a few months. But other than that, thank you guys so much for coming by. I wish I could have brought better news. Hopefully you'll enjoy it more than I did. Thanks for coming by, and as always, long live the boys.